Hello to my wonderful listeners. I am back in Iowa now, and I just finished my first full day back at work after spending the second half of my week last week pulling teeth in Montana, which was a wonderful opportunity, and I really enjoyed it. So, thank you everyone, because I know that I was not as vocal as I had been. In fact, now, if you can believe this, I have been doing my baby podcast now for about 2 weeks. And I have 200 Facebook followers plus my 37 subscribers on YouTube, which is just my tiny little mustard seed. And hopefully, this will grow into something that influences and helps a lot of people. Today, our subject is mansplaining. And I just want to start by just giving a little caveat that this podcast is not about hating on men. So if you are a man and you want to hear more about mansplaining, just know that I won't be saying anything threatening to you. First, I want to celebrate my 2 weeks of having my little baby podcast here by reading a couple of things that people have said to me, because I've gotten a lot of feedback. And thank you to all of you who have given me feedback. It really is the butter on my bread. Not that I eat bread right now, but honestly, it's so satisfying to know that my efforts make a difference for people. So here's a nice, simple one. And actually, this is part of a much more complicated conversation. But she just said, I've been thinking a lot about what you've been saying. And I thought that one was really nice. And I'm just going to scroll to a couple more here. Going a little slow. Laura, you're so funny. I thought I was the only crazy dental student that spent her lunch pumping breast milk. Yep, I sure did that. And it was lonely. Here's one. Great job. I personally love the one about the lady that had to wait for her appointment yet seemed so happy for you to see her. Some people are just nice and some people are just jerks. Sometimes it doesn't matter what we do. Nice work. I will keep watching. Always makes me feel good when people say they're going to watch more. And subscribe. The timing of your message is so perfect for me. I've always respected you, but man, now I'm a parent. How the hell did you manage the mama role, especially to a newborn, and go to dental school? Well, I can tell you, once you have a newborn, everything is hard. Can't wait to hear your next podcast. Hope you are well. All right, one more. Laura, I just had to reach out and tell you thank you. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your truth and vulnerability. Your words about weakness becoming strength came at the perfect time for me. I'm pretty sure the universe needed me to hear you. So thank you for being you and sharing your story. Miss you. You know, it's kind of funny that that one mentioned the universe, because honestly, it's kind of weird. It really is weird. I'm not saying there's magic, but maybe there's magic. I can't tell you how many times somebody says that was just the right timing, or I really needed to hear that right now, which is kind of nice. In fact, I just spent the last half an hour talking to someone, and she said, you have a gift, continue to share it. And it was my pleasure to share with that person. And if you've been thinking about reaching out to me because you have something you want to talk to me about, I will listen to you. I promise that I will listen to you, and I will do it without judgment, because believe you me, I've done crazy shit too. Or I've had feelings that are not rational. And sometimes you just need someone to help you work that stuff out. So if you want to talk to me, go ahead and open up. I will listen to you. So let's get back to mansplaining. Does anybody know what mansplaining is? It's basically so it's kind of a feminist term, and I'm going to speak about it in terms of feminism first, and then I'm going to open up a little more broadly. Traditionally, the men in our society had higher paying, higher prestige careers. And the women were supportive of the men and the babies. And I am not saying that we shouldn't be supportive of the men and the babies, because I am 100% supportive of both. But what would happen is that the men got used to knowing more about shit than the women did. And so sometimes they would, what's the word I want? Benevolently share their knowledge with the women. And the women were supposed to be grateful for that. And honestly, mansplaining, even though now there are actually more women finishing college than men now, the women still get mansplained to a lot. And in my mind, I would propose that we would expand the definition of mansplaining to any time someone who thinks that they are in a higher station or a higher level of knowledge accidentally, benevolently shares their knowledge with someone who they think is here, but is actually here or maybe here. So there's like examples of astrophysicists being mansplained to by a man who has a hobby of astrophysicism or whatever. I don't have any really good examples, but you can kind of imagine how that goes sometimes. So sometimes it's not man to woman. It's not really this to this, but it's not always man to woman. Sometimes it's man to man, sometimes it's woman to woman, but it's any time that someone smart gets explained to, basically. And why do you think that mansplaining is so upsetting to the receiver of the information that they already have? And I have a proposal for this too, and I'll explain to you about it by giving you an analogy. So let's pretend that I have a 4-year-old who's been dancing around the living room joyously to some music, and then the 4-year-old looks at her mom and she goes, "Mommy, I'm a better dancer than you." And, the 4-year-old is thinking about how great she's been dancing, and the mom would normally think to herself, "Oh, that's so cute. She's really proud of herself for dancing well." And she doesn't go, "That's so upsetting that my 4-year-old just told me that she was better at dancing than I was. That is not true." And the reason that the mom doesn't get upset is because she doesn't feel threatened by that statement. She knows she can rock it. She knows she can floss and boss or whatever. She can dance. She doesn't need the 4-year-old to see that she's a good dancer. Do you see what I mean? There is something that we do, and it happens when there's something really important to us about our own perception of ourselves, okay? And it's this thing called imposter syndrome. And I experienced a bout of imposter syndrome not that long ago. In my practice, I do treat some sleep apnea. I make an appliance that people with sleep apnea wear when they're sleeping that holds their lower jaw forward to help their airway stay open so they don't snore as much and have apnea events. And I was recently invited to speak to the main group of physicians who treat sleep apnea in our town. And oh my gosh, I was so nervous. Like, I'm just a lowly dentist, and now you guys are gonna listen to me? I was freaking out a little bit. And what I was worried about was that in the field of sleep apnea, I didn't count as much. Now, what happened when I got there was that I had a bunch of providers come to my lunch and learn, and afterwards, they all stayed behind and asked me more questions about how things work in our practice and how the appliances work that we make. And they were so gracious, and I didn't really need to feel like an imposter. But my brain was telling me before then that I wasn't good enough. And I think that sometimes when we get mansplained to, it pokes at a part of us that doesn't feel confident. And that's when it's upsetting. So actually, when we get mansplained, it tells us more about ourselves than it does about the person who's explaining something to us. Maybe it is true that we don't need that explanation. But what we can do when we feel offended when we're mansplained is look inside ourselves and see what shit our brain has been telling us that's been causing us to feel inadequate in that area. And maybe even write it down. Write down our feelings that we had when we got mansplained to. And look at that thought and ask yourself, is that a correct thought? Because if we look at it with our metacognition and we go, okay, I'm going to just observe this thought as a third party. If we look at it, we might be able to examine it with some compassion on ourselves and help ourselves make a new thought that's more accurate and also serves us better than the shit that our brain was giving us. So if we find that we're getting mansplained to and it's upsetting, look in here for the reason that it's upsetting. And if you think it's funny, you can share it instead. Share it with somebody who also gets mansplained too. All right, well, that is the rest of my explanation for tonight. I thank you so much for being here with me and sticking with me while I experiment on my podcast. I have one tiny favor to ask each of you who has thought to yourself, wow, this really is useful. Or I'm so glad that these podcasts are touching my life. I would like to reach many more people than I have right now. And I'm asking each of you to please share either my Facebook page or a specific video or my YouTube channel with someone that you care about who you think could benefit from my messages. This is how I can keep doing this. I need to have more people hearing me in order to make more content. And not yet, but this is where I'm going. And I do want to share more good things with people. So this is what I'm asking for. So if this is good for you, if you've been enjoying it, please, please, please share it with somebody. And I really appreciate it. Hope you all have a good night. Bye-bye.